Attention, all curious minds, innovators, and trendsetters. It's time to pause, lean in, and get ready for an extraordinary journey as we dive deep into the fascinating realms of life, technology, entertainment, and business. Let's explore, learn, and grow together. Brace yourselves, for the next thrilling episodes of HIPTHER Talks is about to take off. Counting down from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of HIPTHER Talks. My name is Jasper and I will be your host today. We are taking a deep dive into education and innovation. Now, it's no secret that education is the bedrock of our society and plays a key role in shaping our future. However, in our fast-paced society, education itself is also constantly evolving, presenting us both with challenges and possibilities. This is what we will be taking a look at today with the guidance of Yvette Larsson, an expert in the field of education and innovation. Yvette, thank you for being here. It is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for that awesome introduction. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I'm passionate about learning and innovation and just trying to create the best possible life we can all have while we're here. So thank you.
So tell us a bit about yourself. What's your background, your experience, and how did you end up doing what you do?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So basically, well, first of all, I live in southern Sweden and I work as an MYP teacher in an international school. I teach the IB, International Baccalaureate. And I'm a mom. I have two teenagers, a son who is 19 and a daughter who is 16. And I'm also the co-founder of something called AHA, which is a learning and innovation, what can we call it? A hub, a company, a concept where we want to challenge the way we do learning and education for in the benefits of us all, but first of all, the learners, the students, and so that we can think about great solutions. And I'm in the very south of Sweden, in Helsingborg, and I was born in the very north of Sweden, up in Lapland, 100 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. So when I was a kid in the 80s, I had a lot of freedom to roam the mountains and the forests and the lakes. My parents, they were saying to me, I didn't have a time when I needed to be home. They just said, Yvette, please come home before we start to look for you. So I got this inner compass like, I should be going home now. So I had a lot of freedom. I spent a lot of time in nature. And I'm definitely an advocate for being outside, spending time in nature, being physically active. So this definitely had an impact in my life. Also, I think that spending time in nature and having a lot of freedom gives you also a boost with creativity and courage to try things without nobody interfering too much. And these are also values that I bring into my own teaching and learning now when I am a teacher. And then I was living abroad for 13, 14 years in different countries because I was passionate about traveling and I wanted to meet people from all over the world and learn languages. So my first place was a tropical island called the Reunion Island. And I had this phrase in my head while I was plowing the snow, like I wanted to live on a tropical island where they dance salsa. And that became the French Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean. Didn't dance salsa, but Sega Maloya, that was good enough. And then I lived in France, in southern France, in Provence, and that was fantastic. And that is also my constant love for the Mediterranean. I really, really dream of somehow be able to have something around the Mediterranean area. I feel so much at home there. I just came back from a 3 weeks holiday in Greece and I just love it there. I lived in London for 3 years. I loved London. That was also a dream of mine. And then I lived in Copenhagen, Denmark, very close to where I am now. And I also lived in Norway for 6 years, lots of skiing, lots of outdoor life there. And I said goodbye actually to teaching after 3 years in the profession, because I thought it was suffocating me. I felt like too many rules that I didn't harmonize with my own values. So I thought I just can't do this. For as much as I love seeing other people thriving, developing, meeting challenges, because that's why I wanted to be a teacher, I just felt like the system around it was just too rigid and too outdated. And that was a long time ago, over 20 years now. So I gave up teaching as such, but I worked with sports and health. And so at the end, I was working as a sports manager at sports clubs and country clubs. So I was still working with instructors. So I was helping them to become better instructors. And on the way, I started to become interested in holistic health, growth mindset. And I also had time, like 10 years time, when I was practicing athletics. And we had a trainer who was very much into visualization, doing those mental trainings. I think he was very much, that was very, forward thinking at the time. So, and I had a mom who was also very growth mindset minded. And so I think all those things mixed sort of inspired me, and also, made me start to think about education again. And when my own kids, when we were expats and living in Copenhagen, they went to the international school, Copenhagen International School, and they did the IB. And I thought, wow, the IB is like a leadership program for kids. And then that was the time when I really wanted to go back to education again, because I felt like that program is what I've been searching for. So now I've been teaching the IB. I'm on my 10th, 11th year now, and I just love it. It's not a highly paid job, but I really develop as a person when I teach this program, and the amazement that I have to see young people thrive, to see young people overcome challenges, and to be a facilitator in that process, to give them tools. And somebody is challenged, and then they come up with solutions how to develop. I just love it. And when I was working with younger kids in the primary years, it's wonderful to have a hug at work. Students coming and say, hello. It's fantastic. It really, really means something. Now I work with older kids, teenagers, and I love that as well. I mean, I'm not so limited. People say, what type of teacher are you? And then I'm thinking, I don't think like that even. I just think I love to work in places where people develop in somehow, grow somehow. And if it's a little 3-year-old Maria, or if it's 19-year-old Lucas, or 35-year-old Anna, whatever, it really doesn't matter for me. And of course, it's different methodologies, but at the end of the day, we are all humans. We have the same human needs, and
It's so empowering to hear all this, because I have to say it's quite relatable as well. I've always been interested in traveling in general and learning languages and taking all this experience from all around the world and actually trying to make a difference with it, and to share and to empower people around me. And so many questions popped to my mind, but before we actually dive very deep, let's talk about education in general a bit. And this question often pops to mind, with many countries still using the Prussian educational model, which is essentially a system devised in the 18th century, if I'm not mistaken. Many people believe that it's quite outdated and not suitable for today's world. What are your thoughts on that? Is that so?
Yeah, wow, this question is big. So I'm going to sort of take things one by one, like maybe from the details to the bigger picture, the opposite, I don't know. But I can so relate to that, because there is a picture that Nana Spets and I, who is the other co-founder of AHA, that we are using when we are talking about innovation in education and why it's needed. And that is a picture from, I don't know exactly the date, but it symbolizes like formal schooling started in Sweden in 1842, and everyone was sitting in rows, and there was the teacher in the front, and that's it. And if you go into, I would say, I don't know, it's difficult to say numbers, but many classrooms around the world looks like that. And sometimes it's good to have the classrooms that day. I'm not saying that, but for me, if we write 2023 and think about the possibilities of learning, I think that, first of all, learning happens everywhere. It happens with us too. When we are talking now, I'm learning from you, you learning from us, and we will maybe learn from the listeners, and listeners will learn from us. And people can sit in Australia or Sweden or Romania or South Africa or wherever and just listen to a conversation like I am listening to podcasts or interviews by people. So you can really, really learn everywhere now. And for me, that is in this innovation sort of entourage, that's just so self-evident. But then when you go into the world of school, and especially when you go into the world of national curriculum, those things are connected with political decisions, they are connected with the school culture, and change really very often takes a long time. And even those small things like, for example, I work in the middle years now with teenagers. Science says that teenagers, their biological rhythm is later than others who are beyond 20. And so a starting point, like let's say 10 o'clock, would be more efficient for them. And so why don't we just start at 10 o'clock and maybe go to 3 and have 2 classes online? And I think that learning, education needs to become more agile. And I think that when we are doing our hackathons, youth hackathons with AHA, one thing that is common from wherever the students are, we have had across the globe, participants coming from across the globe, they say one thing, and that is, please, teachers, please, adults, trust us. So trust the process and all those things. So I think that we need to trust young people more, give them other ways of working. I am a strong believer in project-based learning. Project-based learning, again, is very easy to do in primary years. When you're a class teacher and you have the class most of the time yourself in one classroom, you can navigate the schedule a lot. So here we come into practicalities again. And then we go into all the years, like middle years and high school, senior high school. Students have one subject, one teacher, and that is when it starts to become so fragmented. So I think that if we want to have a change in those years, schools need to think more holistic, and it's not easy. And I say this in all humbleness, because I see many principals who wants to do it, but it's not easy, because it needs a mind shift also from the teachers, thinking like, okay, how can I work together with other teachers? Like, for example, what shall we say? I'm so into thinking about climate change now. When I was in Greece this summer, it was the heat wave. It was like 42 degrees, and fires were raging Europe, and it became so evident. And I'm thinking, let's say we would do something in the area of climate change, or writing a hopeful future, or something like that. Game changers, peacekeepers, well-being. For me, I could just match subjects to see how they can work together. But some teachers are so used to work. This is my subject. This is my curriculum. This is what I need to do, and not be able to because then you have the pressure from, the students need to do this and they need to do that, they need to achieve that goal. And that's why I say in all humbleness, because it's not an easy task. And I think loads of teachers would also like to be working more, how shall I say, in the benefits for the students. And also, if you interview students, especially I'm talking about teenagers and beyond, lots of them, they don't like school. They say that it's boring, and they that us teachers are copy pasting the same lesson all the time. Like, and when we know that the brain develops when there is some change and some challenges. So I think that project-based learning would feel like a very authentic way of doing school. And I'm saying authentic as well, like working with your local community, solving things together. For example, here in my town, Helsingborg, they are doing a lot about things in innovation. So they have an innovation hub, like the municipality has named, like, let's say, I don't remember how many, but let's say 20 challenges. So when we work in school, I think that for students also to find relevance in what they're doing, they need to see a connection with the real life. Like, why am I doing this? And if you're working in a project that is actually making your local community better, thriving, healthier, happier, all those kinds of things, then you feel like, wow, I want to do this. You feel this intrinsic motivation, like the motivation that comes from inside, not the motivation like, I want to have an A in this subject. So that makes you more motivated to learn. And on the way, you're doing math and social sciences and maybe art and all those kinds of things. So it's definitely possible. It's not easy, but it's definitely possible. And you can also see with students that when they engage in authentic things, they're just so self-driven, and learning happens. And then we have to find ways, because it's also so much about documentation, about administration. We are like high on documentation, too much, especially in those professions like teachers, like in the health sectors. They are complaining about the same things. We just want to be with the students and create some magical stuff with them. It's like administration, and we joke, it's like administrating the administration is like too much.
Yeah, as a recent student myself, I have to say that I can completely agree with what you say, and this question of authenticity and the question of why I am doing something, it has to. I'd say that as soon as youngsters understand, and obviously adults and professionals help them understand that they are actually studying and learning for their own benefit and the benefit of the people around them, it's a complete shift in mindset. And we youngsters do have the initiative when we understand that it's
Yes, I think everyone, if I did something that I didn't really understand why I was doing it, I would be so demotivated. And take a subject that many people are challenged by, math. I had a student asking me, she came out from a math test and she said, I didn't understand half of the questions, and why am I doing this, and blah, blah, blah. And then I said, and then she said something, I don't remember what it was specifically, but it was like, I don't understand why I'm learning this. This is so hard. I will never use this calculation in my life. And then I said to her, but when you do math, you are practicing your analytical thinking skills, your problem solving skills, and those two are good skills to have. And I saw it was like a light bulb, like, I didn't think about math that way. But just, and also thinking about if you do math, like definitely connected. I had a brief period in my life when I was teaching math. I'm a humanist, so that was out of the comfort zone for me. But I was thinking like, okay, I'm going to look at math as another language. It's a language with numbers. And then a colleague of mine, we had 4 math lessons per week. And then one lesson we called real life math. Can you imagine which lesson was the most popular of the math lessons during the week? It's very obvious. It was the real life math, because then they could apply what they were learning. Like we were doing geometry and they all of a sudden wanted to learn about let's say the architecture of the Sydney Opera House, or the magic patterns of Moroccan buildings or whatever. All of a sudden it made sense.
Absolutely. It sounds amazing. Also, as someone from Romania, the country of the Eastern Bloc, and we also have this image of Scandinavian countries as being on the forefront of education. How much of what you described as optimal education, how much of that is true to Sweden, let's say, or the Scandinavian countries in general? Because we do think of those countries as, you know, the future of education in some sense.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit about this, you and I, before the interview, and I was saying that very often, and I understand why, it's reasonable, very often people just say the Scandinavian countries, it will be like, in Balkan they do this, or in the Benelux they do this, or so. I think when it comes to education, I think that the things that connects the Scandinavian countries, I would say the Nordic countries, like Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, and Iceland, or we extend it to Faroe Island, and those all if we would include every. I think there are a few values that connects us, and then there are practical differences as well. So what connects us is a sense of freedom, a sense of space, like we are not so many of us, but we have a lot of space to roam around, and the sense of trust. We used to trust each other a lot. When I grew up, we used to trust the government a lot because we saw that we could live in a safe society. Now it's changing a lot, like in Scandinavia as well. The mistrust towards governments, it's here as well. So it has been changing, but I think in general, I know we shouldn't generalize too much, but I think there is a big sense of trust, a big sense of freedom, a big sense of open-mindedness, like we want to include people instead of excluding people. So I think that is what those types of values that connect us. Then I think that when people outside of Scandinavia think about education, I think they first and foremost think about Finland, because I think Finland has made the headlines, and they have made the headlines for many good reasons. So I think they are in the forefront of education, really. In Sweden, we are also struggling a lot with education. But I think also, for example, in Finland, there is a focus on play-based learning, and that is also something that I would give a big tick here in Sweden as well. Like we are not giving students grades in an early age. They are playing a lot outside. So these kinds of things still happens here. But I think the Swedish school system is quite challenged. And I will not speak about the other countries because I just know that like from the grapevine in a way. So I think Finland is something to look up to. They have a few systems that works, and I think their teachers are also, how shall I say, I think Finnish young people still want to become teachers. Here in Sweden, it's not that way. We have a lackage of 22,000 last time I saw. So, yeah.
I haven't known about this approach towards teaching, that people are actually reluctant to become teachers. In just a few words, why do you think that is the case?
Because I can only speak for Sweden now, and well, this is a general wave in many Western countries. Like, first of all, there are a few things. I think one that we were talking about in the beginning is the huge amount of administration that you have to do. Like, it's just taking away the time you spend with students. And, the digitalization is great, but we all of a sudden become even more personal assistants to ourselves. Before we may be able to ask an admin, can you please do this? Now we get an answer, look at this and this link. So I think the amount of work added to teachers' workload is the first one. So we teach, and we cannot do admin while we are teaching. So it needs to be some sort of flow. There is a lot of, how shall I say, there is a gap between the rest of the world and the world of education sometimes. I'm not talking so much about the IB because, as I said, I'm teaching the IB, but if I look at national curriculum and national school, there is this when you go into school, it's like a time travel. I met somebody who said it's sometimes like a school museum. You go into a school museum. So there is also much of it is connected to politics as well, how much budget a school can get. And I think also a big value of mine, courage. Like you have to have some courage to change the way, change the routes. And if you see the schools who really paves the way, and I'm connected with many of them across the globe through my work in AHA, you see that it's always one or two very courageous school leaders or teachers who really say, come on, let's do this now. Why are we doing this? And heads up, look at the horizon. Let's do A instead of B because. So I think courage you need to instill some courage to be able to change things. And also I'm in the startup world, so usually you just have to take the first step. You don't have to change everything like a big thing from day one. You take the first step, you do a pilot, you try it out, you have all the data that those overtly administrative systems need, you show this is working, boom, you do it. So it's possible. We had, for example, in AHA a few years ago, we wanted students to have physical activity somehow every day because we saw that students were sitting too much and they were restless and less concentrated. And we said we want to have them going out every day to do some activity or do some activity indoors as well and put a focus on that. So we started in my class as a pilot. Then we were asking other teachers if they wanted to do it. So we got 2 others. The other teacher was saying, no, this is eating up time from my planning. It's eating up time from managing the curriculum. So we were not good enough to show them what happens in the brain when you get a pause and can just give some oxygen to the brain, like your academics go up, your happiness go up, boom. And so, but then came COVID, and in Sweden, crazy days. We were probably the only country in the world who didn't go into lockdown. So we were actually on site teaching the primary years and somewhat the middle years, not the senior high school, they were home. But then all of a sudden, it became a focus on social emotional learning. And then the principal went on board. And then all of a sudden, the whole school, all the classes were doing what we called move and learn. And then we expanded it. We expanded it to focus on outdoor education as well, like taking the students out to see the sunlight. And you think like, this is so self-evident. Like one teacher were asking me, why do you go out so much with the students? And then I said, but why are we indoors so much? Like, yeah, we just have to switch our thinking sometimes. And then we also added, so we were merging it into the IBMYP curriculum as well. So it was all waterproofed. And we were also adding lots of social emotional learning during COVID about how to create good relationships, how to collaborate with each other. And it all fit well with the IB skills that we're using. But what we really boosted was growth mindset. It was applied neuroscience, how to create good relationships with each other, like teaching the teachers and teaching the students about neurotransmitters like oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, what happens when 2 people meet, like you and I, when we meet the first time. Every relationship we create, every person we meet, we scan them like in an instant, like, is this a safe environment? So you were scanning me and I was scanning you and thinking, oh, this seems like a good guy. We will have a good conversation. And when that happens, we become more creative, more collaborative, and more communicative. And if teachers know this, then they can also use it. So the first year when I was working with applied neuroscience methodologies, I had a little note next to my computer with those names of the neurotransmitters. So I was reminding myself to use all of them throughout the day. So that is oxytocin. When you feel safe, seen, loved, cared for, you spray it in the room and magic happens. if there is a lack of oxytocin, you will feel stress and not yourself. You will work, but not from the same capacity. Oxytocin is also when we see somebody being nice to somebody, or even here. So if we are sitting in a room, let's say you're sitting in a classroom or in an open space office, and you hear others being nice to each other, then you're also like, oh, this is so nice. And then you become nicer yourself. And serotonin is like the well-being, seeing each other, saying hello, goodbye, how are you? I usually say serotonin is noticed when it's not there. So imagine if you are at work and you pass a group of people and say hello, and they don't say hello to you. Then it's like, what is happening here? So serotonin is like when we have rapport, when we have this, hello, I see you, you see me, and we go on with the day. That is also super important in a school environment. So when I had younger students, I was always standing by the door and saying hello to everyone before they came into the class. Because then I could see, oh, this girl, she seemed a little bit sad today. I could say, hey, what's going on? Tell me if you need some help. Or somebody's coming in, jumping. And I said, wow, what did you have for breakfast? I want to have it too. Please give it to me. So already before we started the class, I had made a connection with them. And then the same thing happens. You can do a lot of things when you communicate and create those dopamine, create excitement, like it's fun to learn. You write one word on the whiteboard when everyone comes in and they start to be curious. What is this about? And I think it's this. And woo, not serving everything, like having this inquiry-based learning, like curiosity. It's like this dopamine is like the hook in a film, like you get so hooked, like on those series on Netflix. I mean, last summer I was crazy about what was that series about, Manifest. I was like, oh gosh, I need to see next episode and next. The dopamine flowing. So dopamine is great for excitement and inquiry-based learning and all that, but it's also super bad when it comes to scrolling, like scrolling your phone. Or wow, it could go on forever. So it's this balance. And then you have endorphins when you overcome something that, like you put a goal and wow, I did it. Like, wow, I biked 38 kilometers this summer. I didn't think I would do that. Wow, I'm here now in Melle eating lunch. And before summer, I thought that I would, that wouldn't be possible. And endorphins is there when you laugh together with friends. All of those things, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, when those things are in the room, it's the same thing. You become communicative, creative, and collaborative. And that's what we want. We want to create those really, really good relationships with others, because otherwise you get onto the neurotransmitter that is too edge, cortisol. So when cortisol is in the room, you will learn, but you will learn out of fear. So cortisol is when we are polarized, when there is anger in the room, where there's frustration, mistrust. And yes, you can imagine some teachers or bosses or people who are very imposing or have a very aggressive way of being. Then you feel smaller and you feel like that. You will learn, but you will learn out of fear. And so cortisol is like when two kids are fighting in the playground, or cortisol is there when a teenager is looking at the phone and somebody didn't like or snap them in the right moment. So we have to sort of break those things, like in a school environment, the teachers need to pick up on what's going on in the room, because if that teenager is still thinking about that snap, she's not going to learn, or he's not going to learn. He's going to think about the thing. So those things need to, I usually say that I'm trying to have those relationships that you clean out as fast as possible, because otherwise they can go on for a day, a week, a month, a year, your whole life. Some relationship just clashed because people didn't speak to each other. And there was maybe sometimes just one sentence, hey, I'm sorry I didn't, blah, 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 blah. So I think it's super important for teachers, but also for students. And I think also for anybody who works with teams, actually, to learn a little bit about the brain and our behavior, why we do the stuff we do, and how we can just be nicer with each other. The world is too polarized and there's so much stress going on. So I think that I was in Greece now And I just melted how kind people were to each other. Like what happens in society when people are kind to each other? It was like balm to my soul. It was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's these things, once you learn them, they sound like, okay, here's the theory, here's what you have to achieve. And it's kind of similar, the first thing that when people talk about public speaking, let's say, is that somehow you have to keep up their attention, which I suppose is also true in education. And okay, keeping up their attention, let's say, bring something visual. Here's a PowerPoint. And maybe 10 years ago, a PowerPoint presentation was something new and something interesting. But nowadays, I think that it's not the case, and people think, okay, here's another PowerPoint that is full of text and full of things that I don't care about.
Yes, that was my student who says that teachers are just copy pasting every lesson.
Exactly.
He was referring back to the PowerPoints. Yes. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's this idea that arguably children nowadays or youngsters nowadays are more difficult to teach and to keep up their attention because and teaching in general is more difficult because of student behavior, because of, you mentioned COVID and you mentioned scrolling, and we always need a new impulse every minute, the short TikTok videos and all these things. Is it true that it's more difficult? Are we becoming more of a nuisance than?
I don't know if, there are two things going on in my mind when I think about that. People in all times have said it was better before. So that's like a phrase. But I think what is actually true, I'm following a fantastic brain researcher, called Anders Hansen here in Sweden. And he said what is true is that the attention span is becoming lower because of social media. So that's a fact. You can go in and look for scientific articles. So young people have less of an attention span because of social media. The way that social media is like constructed, like with short videos and very fast conversations full time, and so there is, and also that students are reading less, like they are paying less attention to books and stories. So I think that teachers, we need to be storytellers. We need to be less of professional PowerPoint presenters, but more storytellers. And I was actually doing an experiment with an MYP2 class this spring that was beautiful. It was a little bit challenging in the beginning. So I decided so we go back again, 1 foot in education, innovation, startup environment, and 1 foot in a system that is the IB, which I love, but still it's a system and I have to do stuff in the curriculum. So one of the things was that we're going to read a book during the year. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, I did a little research before and I realized that, wow, the reading habits are very spread out, like maybe a handful read every month and maybe a handful didn't read at all and somewhere in between. And so first of all, how are they going to go through a whole book? And they have other subjects as well. And then I started to think, like, I'm going to use Socratic seminars for this literature study. And I planned it for 6 weeks. So every week they knew what they were going to read, but they also knew which questions were going to come. And when they arrived at the Socratic seminars, I had arranged the classroom so we were sitting in a circle the first time. And on each chair, there was one of the questions so they knew which questions were going to be there, so they could mentally prepare a little bit. And when they arrived, they knew that the questions were going to be out there. And I had put them upside down. So they sat down a chair and then they got the question and they could use like 5 minutes to think about what it was. So then we were talking about it. They didn't have to write anything. They didn't have to write a book report or anything more than their own reflections. And then we started to talk about the setup about the Socratic seminar, that it's not a competition in speech. It's about exploring ideas, exploring concepts in order for us to expand our thinking. So it's a lot of analytical thinking skills, creative thinking skills. And that was the first one. And then the second one was that I did what is called aquarium or the fishbowl. So you have half of the class sitting and discussing, and the rest were sitting outside, and they were analyzing the way that the conversation went. And the result was that the ones who were listening thought that the ones who were discussing were they could have been more courageous to say what they thought. So we were working then. The next lesson was about being more courageous. So it was very, very, very narrowed down to certain talking points. So, and I was also showing them like the way we think. Like the first level is very superficial. Who is the author? Who is the main character? Where, in which time does this, blah, blah. But then as you go down, you start to ask questions like, the main character loves music. What is the importance of music? Why do you think music is so important in people's life? And what music do you like? And so it became more about learning about yourself and the world you live in. And the questions were that they also started to understand the different level of thinking. And they could also, and I could say, okay, grades up here, we have the lower grades. Down here, when you show the analytical thinking, that's where it becomes interesting, and that's where the higher grades are as well, because then you can connect yourself to the literature and to the world and learn more about that. And so as we went on, the last lesson, that was the sixth lesson, then I had put pictures of the characters in the book spread around the room, and they were going to come to the Socratic seminar as that person. And then you have to put yourself in the person and give that person's perspective. There was a moment when they had to mingle with each other. So it was sort of like creating something fun to that literature study that they thought was going to be a few questions and a book report, and that's it, blah, blah, blah. So you have to think like, what can I do that is sparking some interest and making it fun? Because think about yourself, like, when we learn, it's like, how do you learn best? Like when you immerse in things, when you're using different senses, when you think something is exciting or moving, it needs to touch you somehow. If it's just superficial or monotonous, it's going to be boring. And okay, yeah, I remember I did that, but what was that really about? But if you go somewhere, let's say I went to Knossos in Crete. I didn't because it was too hot. But let's say I went to Knossos with my kids. They would have had a fantastic learning experience about the Minoan culture, which was probably the oldest civilization in Europe, instead of just reading it in a book. And then we come to the next level, which we haven't talked about at all. It's the digital possibilities, like imagine if we were using some VR glasses and we could just step into the world of the Minoan culture, ancient Greek culture. That could also be very, very impactful for a learner.
Absolutely, and I think it's a great way of introducing this new topic of technology. What you just said, and there was a sentence that you said, or an idea that you said when we were discussing the outline of this talk. You mentioned that you'd like to focus on what it means to be human in a global age of technology, because you mentioned these VR gloves and glasses and everything, and in some sense, I do also understand concerns from people saying that it dehumanizes us even more, and we lose the personal touch of education, which is, I believe, and you mentioned it as well, it's also crucial. How do we actually stay human in this world?
Yeah, well, that is also a good question. How do we stay human? Yeah, I think that the question our aha key question, what does it mean to be human in a global age of technology? It combines two concepts, humanity, and it combines technology, and the sort of merging point there, how we can use technology to be better humans instead of becoming technology. And some people want to become technology, and that's really up to them. But we are looking at, for example, what does it mean to be human? What are the skills? What are the values? What are the things that actually makes us human? What is the constitution of being a human? And I think something that really had me think this summer, and I'm also writing an article about it now, is that I think we need to become reconnect with our humanness. I think that the arts and the humanities need to take a bigger part in our lives. Like, for example, in a school, for example, maybe arts, drama, music is not as highly looked upon as language, numeracy, math, and those kinds of things. But if you think about it, like all those subjects, arts, music, drama, it tags on to creativity, and creativity is one of the basic things that actually made us human. There are three things that actually made us thrive as human, and that is our communication skills, collaboration skills, and our sense of creativity. There is a book called The Survival of the, is it Kindest, I think? Yeah, The Survival of the Kindest, or the survival of the friendliest, Harwood's. And they want to put forward the thesis that us humans, Homo sapiens, we developed because we were able to work in small groups together. We were able to collaborate and to communicate and do things in a creative way. So I think that we lost that sense of creativity somehow, and we wanted to be efficient and all that. And I think that now with AI as well, some people say that, we will lose so much, but I think that is coming up every time there is some sort of technology being introduced. I remember when I was learning how to write an email, horrible. But I think that we need to have a bigger focus on arts and humanities, like the arts, I would say, not just art, but the arts. And because look at, I'm referring back to Greece again, but I was doing some research about Crete where we were, and I was looking at all those art expressions that was talking to me from 6,000 years ago, people making necklaces with beads and doing fantastic art on their ceramic pots. You have the same in Romania, those ancient civilizations and traces. It's like you speak to, it's like having a conversation with a person from 6,000 years ago. So something in us, we really love to express ourselves somehow. And if we don't, it's sort of like building us into a cage in a way. So I think that everyone is creative. It's like, it can be like somebody likes to cook, or somebody likes to be creative in math, or we have it in us. And I think that is something that needs to be more in the spotlight, to create spaces where people can be more creative, that where the roof is high, the ceiling is high, it's okay to try and try again. And with technology, I'm very, I would say I'm maybe like one of those people who jump on everything just because I'm crazy. Not crazy, just because I'm curious. I'm curious about, for example, Snapchat. I don't use it that much, but my daughter sends me messages on Snapchat, so I have Snapchat. And when they introduced their own AI, I got a little bit scared. I was thinking, here we go. The Snapchat buddy, mine is called Enzo, because I created it because I wanted to see what's going on there in the world of teenagers. And so then I really got scared because what is this person going to tell them? And it looks like it's just another friend with the avatar and everything. So it's also, we need to have maybe a Socratic seminar about what is real. Like, where does real go into unreal, and what is fantasy and imagination, and what is real? And that is also the capacity of the brain. I usually compare the brain to the universe, like it's infinite. Like, so we maybe need to define a few things for us to understand, because it's like in this big time, we are in a time of a lot of changes. So I think conversations like these helps us to understand. That's why I also love LinkedIn so much, because I'm learning so much from discussions with people from across the globe, innovators, educators. And then when you discuss and you talk about things, you learn more about them than just sit at home and this is how it is, so that is how it is. Like, try to learn and get a nuanced picture of it all. Like in the beginning, when everybody was forbidding the AI in schools, but instead asking the students, I asked them, how can we use AI? When should we use it? When should we not use it? What shall we do about fraud? And they came up with really good reasons. And I think that when you have those conversations with students, they also own that process. And at some point they were saying, oh, I'm using a lot of AI now, and please, can we have a look? And I said, you too can have a look. You two friends can sort of see how you can work with it. And also referring to the AI source as you refer to any other source. And now you can even ask the AI to add the chatbot to say the sources. And so I think that we are learning through conversation. I'm a big, I love conversation. I like to explore things and have dialogues and see how, I don't like when things are becoming black and white. Let's just try to explore and just find solutions. And also, I think that as I want to come back to, we want to express ourselves. Like, it's cool to have your AI write a haiku for you. Like, wow, inspiration, like any other inspiration. But it's also nice to go home and start to think about making your own haiku and trying to mix language and math together. Like, so I think that, for example, art, it's super cool to see AI art made by Mind Journey, for example. It's really, really cool. I love it. And it blows my mind to see those different type of architecture that an AI like Mind Journey makes. And maybe that will sort of inspire architects to think differently, who knows? But at the end of the day, it's a human who probably needs to build the building, and it's a human who needs to encourage other humans. It's a human who needs to care for you. There are lots of things digital can do, and there are some of the things that we just need to be human. And we need food, we need roof over our heads, we need love, we need care. And if you look at societies where they live the longest, like the blue zones, for example, there is the island of Icaria in Greece or Sardinia in Italy. What they notice is the care for each other and the proof of meaningfulness, doing something in a community. When we talk about what it means to be human, eating healthy food, not eating too much meat. I don't put any judgment in that. I'm just saying what they are doing. Having a siesta, perhaps dancing, and a rich social life, caring for each other, creating those relationships. So I think relationships is at the core of what it means to be human.
You know, the thing that comes to my mind is when smartphones became so smart and the internet gained a reach globally. You know, we have this idea that all the information in the world is in our pockets and we can reach it. And there were some people saying that that would also mean that we don't learn those things anymore and we become less intellectual and less what's the word for it? Less informed. And I think that it's more of a shift towards soft skills and interpersonal skills. Do you think that this is a kind of a natural way of us developing, or is there a danger?
I think 100%, because and with AHA, we don't mention them as soft skills, we mention them as essential skills. So they are essential. So I think the skills, first of all, like if you look at an employer and you have two people who have the same knowledge level, and this person have great social skills, this person hasn't, this person will get the job. So I think 100% that the skills are so important. And we have actually created, like we call it, our playbook, our skills playbook. And that is also what we're using when we do the hackathons. So they are sort of grouped, but it doesn't mean that they have to be like separate. They are all interconnected, like cognitive skills, social emotional skills, environmental skills, digital skills, spiritual skills. And so we are working around them. And the same with the IB, we have ATL skills, that's approaches to learning. And so the students, they learn those skills implicitly and explicitly throughout the whole school since they are in kindergarten. And that's also one of the reasons I love the IB. I had a short period of time when I was teaching in the Swedish national curriculum, and I wanted to create a unit, an English unit, and I added the skills. And the students were baffled, like, this is not English. And I realized I'm so wrong here. I shouldn't be in this school at all. While the students in the IB was like, they just kicked in. Oh, what type of skills do you need? Oh, we need communication skills here. We need to collaborate well and blah, blah, blah. So I think they are just, it's just so, you were using the word empowering. I think the skills are just so empowering when it comes to learning. It's just the alpha omega. And I think that, like, yes, I wouldn't say that maybe we lose some, maybe we gain some, but I think that the young people now, they know a lot, and they have so many possibilities, like the way my 16-year-old daughter writes a lab report is like, wow, back in my days, that would have happened when I was at university, because she can, with a blink of an eye, she can just click and get a format of how to write a scientific report, and it looks absolutely amazing. So I think that loads of things have become better now, and we are more knowledgeable, but we have to digest. We have to use critical thinking skills. That's also a very important skill in connection with digital competence. Like we have to be able to digest, what is it that we're seeing? Who is the sender? What is the reason for this? Is this a troll? Is this true? Is it fake? Is it a deep fake that I'm looking at? So critical thinking skills in connection with digital literacy, that's super important. And for adults as well, like what is it that we are seeing?
You kind of already touched on the topic of demand on the labor market, but allow me to ask this again separately. I think it's something that we youngsters are quite interested in, to find out what the skills are, especially now people saying that AI is replacing a lot of jobs. Mm-hmm. What are the skills that you think will be essential in the next, 10, 20 years, and that will be in demand on the labor market?
It's super difficult to have that time span in these days we are living now, but because technology is working so fast. But I will say something on a general side and then on a more details. So the most important thing, I think, is to be good at creating healthy and sustainable relationships, which includes being excellent in communication. And also being a team player, like how to solve things together, collaboration. So we have so many challenges to deal with, especially with the climate, polarization, all those kinds of things, youth well-being. So we have a lot of challenges. And in order to write a hopeful future, in order to write a hopeful future for us all, we need to be able to collaborate together, because when we do, that's when we can solve things. So communication and collaboration, I think, is on high demand. Also being very innovative and creative, like to be able to think a little bit outside that box and to have the courage to try things. I think these two are also, so the C's, I love the C's: collaboration, communication, creativity, innovation, and courage. And then, of course, you need to think about more job-related skills. So if you're an architecture, that's I don't know about what type of tools an architect uses. So that will be more detailed to the sector that you belong. But I think that everyone wants to work with people who are friendly, and people who have an open mindset. Yeah, let's try this. And I think that is really needed, because well-being is also not only for youth, it's adults who are challenged as well with well-being going down. And so I think that we need to be kind with each other, be friendly with each other, open-minded, and have an approach that we can solve things and try out new things in an environment that is like trusting, because trust is, if you don't have trust in a relationship, you will be very limited. You will not create the magic that you can create when people are trusting each other in a team or in a bigger team.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also a technical question which also relates to this. You said that it's quite difficult to think of what it will be like in 10 or 20 years. And I'd say that it's one quite significant challenge in education to actually measure its success and measure its effectiveness. How can you quantify the success of the methods that you apply? So how does one know that what we do is actually effective in educating people?
There is how shall I say, professional answer to that, and then it's a less quantified answer to that. And I will start with the first one. The first one is that, for example, if you're a teacher and you work in school and the students love coming to school, they say on Monday when you see them, I can't wait to start with my project. That is when you're doing something right. Then you know that they have this lust for learning. And I hope that everyone can be lifelong learners. Like when you see that the students are happy when they come running and they come eager and they want to do things. It's not that easy with teenagers because they're a little bit more more aware of their friends and everything. They're not so spontaneous. But when you see that students are motivated and they want to learn and they come to questions and they have suggestions themselves, you see they have this intrinsic motivation, then you know that you're doing something good. That's for me, when I'm thinking what happens here, or if I see that they're not motivated, then I have to go and research what's going on here, what do you need, and what is it that is not working, how can we make it work, and sort of ask those questions. So I think that is my measurement device. And then, of course, for example, when we did that well-being program that went on, and my colleague actually, she became employed as a health instructor. So we actually made that happen, that dream of ours. Then, of course, you need to do those scientific proof that admin wants to have. I remember I was sitting with a principal who asked me, but how are we going to know that physical activity is going to boost the students' well-being and academic achievement? And I was I got so triggered because it's self-evident, and because the world is becoming so geared onto this evidence. It's like we have a what do you call it? It's over the top. And then I said to that principal, I said, well, go on Google and read. You will find millions of, if not millions, but hundreds of thousands of articles proving what we are saying. Because it was in this situation when everybody knows that the sky is blue when it's blue. And that person was asking this question. I thought, if this is how rigid your brain is, then I was just very provoked. And I was really trying to do this inner yoga. I thought, okay, this is the system that we're in. And I tried to be humble and all that. But it was very difficult. So I think that not to exaggerate this hunt from research when the research is in front of you. And I love science. It's not, don't get me wrong here. I love science. I even studied science journalism. But there is this exaggeration of documentation that I just feel like I had enough. We need to live more. It's like we need to live and embrace fun and life and social emotional learning and those kinds of things. That's when the real learning happens. And that's where the memorable learning happens as well. Like, for example, this summer, when I was in Greece, I said that many times now, we were on a boat trip, and at that boat trip, we were going to a lagoon, and then there was an island that we were also going to, and you can only approach that island through a boat. And outside of the island, just outside the shore, was a shipwreck. And my daughter, she went quiet, and I was thinking, like, what is going on? Is she just admiring the beauty and say, hey, it's beautiful? And she said, yeah. And then she was saying, look at that shipwreck. I said, wow, it's super cool. And then my son, who is 3 years old, said, let's go to the shipwreck. Let's snorkel out there. And my daughter was like, yeah, I don't know if I dare to. Oh, it looks a little bit spooky. Like, she started to think about what is called the Caribbean, Pirates of the Caribbean. And then my son said, let's try, let's go. And if you feel it's too scary, we can just return because it's so close to the seashore. And she gave it a thought, and they went. And then that moment, I think it was like 30 minutes of our trip, that was the best part of the trip for her, because she overcome her fear. She dove to not dove, but snorkeled to this ship. They went on YouTube to see what this ship was about, who was on that ship, what did it look like, if you could really dive in. Are there any fish there? What type of maritime creatures are there? So it became a whole thing about the shipwreck. And that is when you're doing some adventure, overcome challenges, become curious about something real. I thought that was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, you know, thinking of what you said, it's I'd say that you have this limitation in the public sphere or the public environment, public schools, public education, because you said you have to document everything and you have to prove everything, and you are always followed, and you have to they have to keep track of what you do. And I find it so interesting that you are in the startup sphere, the private sphere as well, and also in public education. So what do you think the future will bring? Do we keep public education? Does the private sector gain, or will it gain a bigger influence or bigger market share? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's like also a big question, because we have different countries around the globe with different financial possibilities. We have countries that don't have so many private schools, like Sweden. Typically, we don't have a lot of private schools here, so we don't have schools here are typically not very rich, and it's not like, oh well, I will change and teach in a private school with lots of money. It just doesn't exist almost. While if you go to the Arab world, if I would go and work as an expert there, that would be a totally different thing. And then, of course, you have different educational, like education is put in a historical environment as well. What type of ways of teaching, like Northern Europe, Southern Europe, the way you look at learning, the way you look at humans, all those kinds of things play a role. But then it also comes to, like we were talking about earlier, like in a community, if there is somebody who is in particularly innovative, who can have the power to inspire others to change, to dare to take the leap and dare to change, dare to try things. And I think actually my town has been quite good, not super good, but I can see the first seeds are starting to come out, because we had a city fair last year called H22, which was all about innovation and sustainability. And I can see that there is something going on there, that there is a will. It's not like fully blooming or flourishing, but I see that there are things happening. So I think that people matters, like those, especially in leadership. I think that if a leader is saying to us, you know what, it's okay to do your little team, every teacher is part of a team, like if it's a subject team or year team, you can have your team meetings somewhere else. You can go out in the park. You can go to a cafe or whatever you want. This sounds so ridiculous because in parallel, people are working from home around the globe. So why wouldn't we be able to do that in school? It's just so, that's what I mean. It's just so, it blows my mind. So I think that leaders in schools, they play a big, important role, because if the leader says so to the teachers, then the teachers will also be more open-minded in the way they approach the students. Like, yeah, why couldn't we go and do the Socratic seminar under that big tree instead of sitting here in the classroom? Like, just go. It's just, when you think about it, it's we need to liberate our mind a little bit about what school is. And that's why I'm thinking like learning and education are connected, but it's not the same thing. Education is like belongs to a bigger system, and learning that happens everywhere. And I think also, if you look at the private sector, you have lots of actors already there. You have Lego, for example, Lego Foundation. They are doing a lot. They have loads of great social and emotional programs. Are you familiar with the Finnish organization 100? You need to check it out, 100.org. They are looking for the 100 most impactful innovations across the globe. I have submitted to from AHA, and I've been also in the board looking at which innovations are impactful and scalable. And then you look at also like that's also a private sector. So there are loads of those private companies that are boosting education in some ways. And you also see like organizations like Learn Life in Barcelona or Green School Bali, now with the new amazing principal, Benjamin. And you have loads of those, both individuals and organizations that are doing amazing things. And these are the type of organizations and schools that we tend to work with when we do our hackathons, because we want to learn from them and we want to put the young people in an environment where they learn from each other as well. So I think things take time in the public sectors, but I think it's possible. If it's possible in other sectors, it's possible in education as well. It just takes those courageous people who dare to pave the way for something that is more healthy, more sustainable.
Okay, so as a last question, what does the future hold for you and for AHA? Let's say, what are some projects that you can share with us?
Yeah, so our next project is a hackathon about well-being, youth well-being, because we have had a few now. We have had the future of education. We have had peacekeepers, game changers, and then we asked because I am in the middle school, so I try to see what is important for young people, and it's like 99.9% that everybody wants to talk about well-being and how to make well-being better for young people now. So we are going to do a youth well-being hackathon in October, and that is, we call it local. Like we have local teams coming to a place called HETCH. HETCH is Helsingborg Tech Hub, where we are sometimes. And then it's also global. Teams from across the world can join us. Usually it's in our hemisphere because of the time difference. But then it's like a learnathon. So we have 6 challenges through the day, and 2 weeks prior to the hackathon, we gather the teams on a Zoom like this, and we give them the challenges so they know what they're gonna solve on that day, so they can mentally prepare a little bit, like a Socratic seminar actually. And then they at the end they have to create a video of all their solutions so they can present their solutions, and so we can also present their solutions to decision makers, to school leaders, and to anybody who wants to hear the voices of youth. And then I am in September, we organized TEDx in Helsingborg, and I was curating. I was in the curatorial board to pick out some of the speakers. So that is not a HA arranged thing, but that is something that me, in my role as a HA, I will participate. And then we are putting out our playbook as well, the skills playbook, and how to work with it. And we have a new homepage where we focus. Most of our focus is on applied neuroscience and how that can actually ameliorate the relationship between people, so we can have peace on earth. No, I'm joking a little bit, but to create better relationships and a more healthy and happy society. We want to write a hopeful future, because we strongly believe that we are the writer of the future. If we say it's going to be horrible, then it's probably going to be horrible. But if we look at solutions, if we look at how humans have overcome challenges throughout the history of time, I think we can do it. I think that nature is our home, and I think that is something that education should really look at, not be blinded by stuff that is not important, but what is really, really important. I have myself two phrases that I use when I choose what are the things I want to prioritize. That is, to whom and to what do I give my time to, and why? So that is with everything. Like before this interview, I asked you questions, and I asked your colleague questions as well, because I wanted to know, who are these people? What is the purpose of it? Does it harmonize with my own goals? And then, yes, then I do it. And the other one is this healthy for me and the planet? So when I shop things or when I go places, like this summer as well, I was questioning myself flying to places and eating meat. I was never a big meat eater, but I started to eat less meat. So I have those two sentences. To whom and to what do I give my time to, and why? And is this healthy for me and the environment, the planet? So that's how I prioritize. And that's how I also prioritize at work.
I have to say, I'm so glad that I could be part of this discussion, and I really believe that, especially with these this kind of ending or closing, it was empowering, and it had or has a positive message for us and for everyone.
Thank you.
Yvette, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invite. I really love this conversation and great questions.
Thank you again, and I hope that our listeners will find it interesting and useful as well. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Thank you for listening, and check out our YouTube channel, the Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other channels. You will find us, and hope to see you as soon as possible. Bye.
And that's a wrap for this section of HIPTHER Talks. Thank you for being a part of our journey today. Don't forget to tune in next week for more insights and discussions. Stay connected with us on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and more. Until then, keep exploring and keep growing. We'll see you next time.